Calgary Flames trade rumors are intensifying as we have another day, another trade destination for Flames star defenseman Rasmus Andersson. This time he has been linked to the Boston Bruins, and this is one of the more interesting proposed return trade packages for Calgary. We're going to get into all that and more in this video, but first I want to welcome you to Flames Digest. I'm Mark Griffith. If you're new around here and you love the Flames, make sure you subscribe so you can stay up to date on all the latest news, updates, reports, and rumors revolving around your Calgary Flames. We would love to welcome you to the Flames Digest family. And we just saw not too long ago Raz kind of get linked to Montreal, and now we have him linked to Boston. Get some of those original six teams going, a little rivalry between Boston and Montreal, obviously, way back. Well, that's been going on for obviously since way back, but an interesting one here, as I said in the intro. I don't know how I feel about this return package, but I'm sure you guys will have a lot to say about it because, again, it is honestly a little intriguing. So let's get into this here. We have an article from Cole Shelton on the day that this video comes out. This video was supposed to come out on the weekend, and then things got in the way, and then other news happened, and I think this will probably be coming out on, like, Wednesday at this point. But either way, trade idea has Bruins acquiring $27.3 million star defenseman in Blockbuster. I wonder who that man is, but weird amount of money there, but I mean, that's just how it truly is. So, the Boston Bruins were one of the worst teams in the NHL last season, but the Bruins have vowed to return to the playoffs next season. That's bold in a tough Atlantic. Heavy.com has a trade idea that sees the Bruins acquiring Rasmus Andersson from the Calgary Flames in a blockbuster deal. We love that word as NHL fans. We love a good blockbuster. They're rare, but hey, when they happen, we absolutely love it. Not that they usually go in the Flames' favor at all, but either way, let's see. So the Bruins, who would they acquire, as if we haven't already said it 16 times? Well, they'd acquire Rasmus Andersson. Now, here's the interesting part. The Flames would acquire Pavel Zacha, who, kind of never lived up to the hype. Andrew Peeke, or some people say Peeke, but Andrew Peeke, and then a 2026 first-round pick. That's actually Toronto's, that I believe Boston acquired in the Brandon Carlo trade at last year's deadline. So this is a lot. So the proposed deal would be a blockbuster, as Boston would acquire Andersson to further bolster their blue line for two good NHL players and a first-round pick. And I love the first-round pick, of course. That's absolutely what I want. Who knows what kind of team Toronto will be next year? You'd assume they're a playoff team, but you can't always assume, so that could end up being a pretty good pick for the Flames. Zacha, is that what we want? Not necessarily in any way. And then Peeke, no, he's just essentially Rasmus Andersson, but slightly younger and not as good in the eyes of most hockey fans. So I love the first round pick. I don't love the other two things because they why would you, get rid of Andersson to free up a roster spot and then bring in Peeke, who just instantly takes that away from one of the youngsters. And then Zacha is just so never lived up to the hype. Wasn't he with New Jersey for a while and just never quite broke in? And then with Boston, he, I guess, has been called a first-line center, but really hasn't been all that great. But overall, again, extremely, extremely interesting here. Let's let the article do the rest of the talking here. So, the Bruins would acquire Andersson, who's entering the final year of his 6-year, $27.3 million deal. A trade would come with an extension, as Andersson would be a key part of the Bruins' blue line going forward. Andersson recorded 11 goals and 20 assists for 31 points in 81 games and would be a key part of the Bruins' roster going forward. Makes sense for the Bruins, of course, as it would kind of make sense for any team to acquire Andersson. Now, in return, Calgary would acquire a first-round pick. You have me there, honestly. As well as Zacha, whose name has come up in trade rumors. Zacha is entering the third year of a 4-year, $19 million deal. Zacha would be a middle six forward for the Flames, as he doesn't have a clear-cut role with Boston. He recorded 14 goals and 33 assists for 47 points in 82 games. Yeah, he'd slot right in, but kind of the same thing as Peeke. He takes away a roster spot from one of the youngsters. Boston would also trade Peeke, who's entering the final year of his 3-year, $8.25 million deal. He would replace Andersson on the Flames blue line and add some more depth to the roster. He recorded 1 goal and 16 assists for 17 points in 71 games. So again, he's a right-handed D-man, is essentially just a direct replacement for Andersson, but in the eyes of a lot of fans, not quite as good. Cheaper, of course, slightly younger, I believe, as well. So I don't know. I love the first round pick in this, and yeah, for Andersson, we would love to acquire a first round pick plus, but in this scenario, yes, what Boston's giving up makes sense for Boston, but it doesn't make a lot of sense for Calgary. You can kind of keep those throwaways, in my opinion. I know some people will have different opinions. They'll say, yeah, absolutely, pull the trigger on that trade. Zacha could be exactly what we need. Peeke helps the Flames stay, I guess, competitive in that way, even though I feel like the youngsters could be a little bit better. But either way, that's kind of, I guess, the link to Boston, and we've seen Andersson linked to almost all 31 other teams at this point. Would Boston be a place Andersson says yes to? You would assume yes, but again, assumptions are a crazy thing in the hockey world. But no matter what, a lot of Flames fans just want a trade to happen. So let's get into the pros of Andersson getting traded. As recently an article came out that kind of went over the pros and cons. So exactly, as it says in the headline here, great article from Gerpalsing. Feel free to go read the entire thing. But he writes pros and cons of Rasmus Andersson starting the season with the Flames. So the way I span it is more, the pros of Andersson being traded. So in this sense, it's the cons of Andersson starting the season with the Flames. So the cons for Andersson starting with the Flames. If you've been reading his previous articles, you know he's a big advocate for Andersson being traded before training camp. I think most of the fan base shares that sentiment. But with it being August 31st, now September 3rd, maybe by the time this video comes out, the likelihood of that happening is low. Here are the cons surrounding Andersson starting the season in Calgary and why Gerpalsing thinks it's a big mistake. So the first one totally makes sense. It's risky. Very risky to have him start the season with the Flames. Carrying Andersson into the season when he's a pending UFA is a major risk for the team. While there is the chance that it could pay off, the chances of it going downhill are also there. What if Andersson gets injured or if he has had a down year? I mean, he was minus 38 last year. You hope he could only get better, right? What if he only wants to go to teams that offer minimal returns at best? Rerun of what we've experienced before. There's a reason why Flames fans keep comparing this situation to the predicament the Flames had with Noah Hanifin 2 seasons ago. If Andersson handcuffs the team like Hanifin did, expect a very underwhelming return. And that's a risk of keeping him into the season. Then you get another Noah Hanifin situation where Hanifin kind of whittled it down to, I want to go to Boston, I want to go to Tampa, or I want to go to Vegas. Went to Vegas, and Calgary really didn't get that great of a return. Not as good as they could have if obviously the Flames had full freedom. So it is a risk going into this season, of course. Not anything we're not used to, but of course it is a risk. Now, from what certain reports have suggested, it seems like that is already happening. We've heard that maybe there was a big trade. So Andersson has already rejected trades to multiple teams, and those teams aren't going to give their best offers if the player doesn't agree to extend. While it's possible Andersson starts the year strong, if he has another down season or his health isn't in check, then disaster will strike. And again, there's so many different ways that it could go if he does play with the Flames, but again, these are just kind of the cons of him starting the year with the Flames. Now, another one is that it's a huge distraction for the team. Whether the players will admit it or not, Andersson starting the season with the Flames is bound to be a distraction for the team. Andersson's name pops up in every news headline, and the media seemingly can't stop asking questions about him, as we know here on the channel. Flames captain Michael Backlund even commented on the situation, stating that Andersson will very likely get traded, but it won't be a distraction for the rest of the team. I disagree. I think it will be a bit of a distraction no matter what. That trade rumors, talks, it always is a bit of a distraction for the players themselves. Now, last thing here, the last con of him starting this season with the Flames, or a pro to trading him, is that Andersson's camp will just have more power. So it's well known at this point that Andersson only has a small list of teams he prefers to go to. This only makes things worse for the Flames if they keep dragging this situation on. If Andersson is adamant on only accepting a trade to the teams on his list, then the Flames' chances of getting a good return decrease. It's also important to note that with the 2026 draft expected to have an elite draft class, teams may not be willing to part with major assets like first-round picks. There's also the risk that with teams knowing Andersson is a pending UFA, they'll give lowball offers to the Flames as they don't want to lose the player for nothing. It's just a complicated situation, and overall, we don't love it. Yes, if a trade were to happen, ideally it would be a great return for the Flames and would happen sooner than later. That's just not how reality happens, but who knows? Maybe Boston is a good trade partner. Maybe some of the other teams we looked at, and surely Andersson would want to say yes to some of these teams, right? Overall, it's just a complicated scenario that seems to get more and more complicated the more it goes on. So please, Craig, please, Raz, just get a deal done so we can all breathe again. Now let's get into the comment of the day to wrap up this video, as we love to do here on the channel. And this was an interesting comment, obviously goes with this video a little bit. It comes from Just My Opinion. He says, no way I do this trade. It comes from, Rasmus Andersson being linked to Montreal and in the return having Mike Matheson, which really makes no sense. But Just My Opinion says, no way I do this trade. It's not what the Flames need. If there isn't a first rounder coming back or a top prospect, then forget it. So true. I think all Flames fans can agree on that. Whoever came up with this trade has been smoking some pretty potent stuff, LOL, and it's true. Why would we want Matheson? It just doesn't make sense. Helps Montreal more than anything. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please subscribe to what you saw here today and have a wonderful rest of your day.